This segment of the Chopin podcast is brought to you by the Chopin Foundation of the United States, presenters of the National Chopin Competition in Miami, Florida, January 2025. Chopin was first and foremost an inventor of music, both as a composer and an improviser. And the piano was just an instrument for realizing those creative impulses. So you might think a Chopin competition should be a competition for composers and improvisers, but it's not. It's a competition where pianists see who can recite Chopin's music the best. Every round, it's Chopin, quarterfinals, semifinals, finals, all Chopin. Then, at the winner's concert, just in case you didn't get the memo, more Chopin. But in the 13th International Chopin Competition that took place in 1995, something strange happened. Along came a wolf in sheep's clothing, an undercover improviser who managed to pass through all the rounds playing Chopin and even win a medal, only to walk on stage at one of the winners' concerts and start making stuff up. I'm talking about Gabriela Montero, one of the most singular musicians of our time. The Venezuelan-American pianist does it all, performing the classics as well as improvising at length in her recitals, often taking requests from the audience. Montero is also a celebrated composer, and speaking of competitions, she was commissioned to write the required contemporary piece for the 2025 Van Cliburn competition. So she truly embodies the complete musician archetype that we tend to associate with some of the great composers from past centuries. And it was at the Chopin competition in Warsaw, of all places, that she chose to first debut her preternatural talent for improvisation. I reached out to the Chopin Institute in Warsaw, which was kind enough to share with me the out-of-print recording of Montero's improvised performances. I then hopped on a call with Gabriela and played them back for her one by one, capturing her reaction to each.
I haven't heard it in almost 30 years. I really have no recollection of it. I know I did it, but I don't know what happened.
All right, well, I have 4 short tracks here. Here's the first one.
Well, I don't remember any of that, but I think it's quite significant because I'm not one to really break rules. Well, I did become that, but when I was that age, I wasn't. So to do something so out of the path of what is normal at the Chopin competition and to just, for some reason, I chose to improvise, which I wasn't really doing in public. So that was quite significant. That was really a step out of my own, let's say, circle of comfort at that point. It was quite beautiful.
It is really beautiful. And it wasn't just a melody or the harmonies, it was the nuances and it was the form. I mean, it was a sense of return, and clearly the audience loved it. Do you remember the context for this? Whose idea was this? Who let you do it? I mean, do you remember it all?
No, I think it was just a decision in the moment. I didn't consult with anyone. I know that. In fact, I was trying to get out of doing the gala concerts because I was so tired. I really wanted to just go home. I wasn't really improvising in public. So it was really, it's interesting that I chose that setting to reveal myself like that.
It just seems so surprising. that it might not have even been authorized. I mean, like, this was at the gala concert, though, right? This is the winner's concert.
Yeah, one of the winner's concerts. Yeah.
And so I guess instead of playing any of that repertoire again, which is usually what happens, you must have said, enough of that. I'm past that now.
I think that's a little bit what happened. I mean, I did play Chopin because I think it was 3 or 4 gala concerts. And I remember I must have played the slowest A minor waltz in history. That's kind of how I felt.
Uh-huh.
I was so tired. So this improvisation, which has a little, I wasn't sharing that with the public, and to do it on this stage, and to break all the rules by playing something that wasn't Chopin, but inspired by Chopin. So it's kind of an homage to Chopin. It's quite beautiful.
That's exactly what it is. It's an homage. I mean, literally, would Chopin have written those notes? Not exactly, but stylistically, it's the same spirit, but it's filtered through your own feelings and musicianship.
Yeah. And I've gone on to do many improvisations that are in the same sound world since then. But of course, every improvisation is different. So this one was very much inspired by my month there, and the just the torture of just having to work so hard and play all this repertoire, which was so beautiful, but at the same time painful in a way.
Well, there's a few more, each a couple minutes long. So let's listen to a few more of these. They love it.
It was, well, I was talking to a friend of mine who's Polish, and he heard the radio transmission, and he said that people were, well, they were very surprised, and they were really puzzled by what this was, and when I was listening to it, there's a certain fury in it, and it's whether it's a mazurka or a waltz, I'm not sure, but you know what I felt? I felt that in that time of my life, I felt very much like a caged animal. And this was kind of my coming out of my shell for a minute in that setting. So there's a lot of pain in that improvisation.
Some of the harmonies they sting.
Yeah.
But just for this to be spontaneous, to be impromptu, and on that stage, I just can't believe it. It doesn't seem real.
It doesn't seem like me, because I was never irreverent, or I wasn't daring in that way. I always had a temperament, but I was quite shy. So it's even more obvious that it was almost like a cry to be let out of that cage of not being able to express myself through my creativity and my improvisation like I needed to at that stage of my life. I was 25,
Not only was it not in the end, irreverent to the spirit of Chopin. If anything, it was a great tribute to his improvisatory spirit. What
Yeah.
Chopin would not have been doing would be playing his own works according to the letter of the score in a competition.
Yeah. And of course, he lived at a time when the totality of this creative universe was celebrated and it was accepted, and it was welcomed. It was part of who the artists were. So it was a different time, and it's interesting that I tapped into that on that stage in this very serious and very conventional kind of place.
Well, you do it a couple more times. Let's hear it.
Well, there is Chopin went south to France and met Poulenc and went forward in time and had a little, I don't know, Aperol spritz with Chaplin, and
and maybe a little rendezvous in Spain, perhaps with
yes,
Albanies a little bit, but
there's a little Mallorcan something there. Yeah,
it's surprising, but also it's not random. It's never, you keep coming back to motives
yeah,
and wow. I mean, I wish I could do this. Nobody can do this anymore. I mean, right? How many people do you know improvise? You probably do know some, but I mean, this is so fresh and polished. I mean, that's not a word we use for improvisation, but you know what I mean? It sounds
yeah.
thoughtfully composed almost.
And yet, as I've always said, I'm not consciously aware of what I'm doing. And I love the fact that it's not studied, because I think we have to leave space in life and in the world for the unexplained and the unexplainable. And there's a certain magic and mysticism in that I really love. I really connect to. There's no need to understand how it happens. Just kind of receive it and enjoy it.
Chopin's definitely in all of these, but it's all you. I mean, this is who you were at the time. So I understand Martha Argerich was an important mentor and had a big impact on your career. Sort of in the wake of the Chopin competition. Could you just talk a little bit about Martha Argerich's impact on your life?
So Marta has been someone who has changed my life because I really needed someone of her, I don't know, incredible stature and everything that she is to believe in me. And she was the one who, when I was 31, heard me play and improvise. And she said to me, you have to share this with the world. You have to be yourself. This is so unique. And she really kind of got me off my chair and threw me out into the world to begin concertizing again, because I had stopped at that point. And just playing with her has been just one of the most special and incredible moments of my life. Not just because of who she is as an artist, but who she is as a human being and the whole collective aura of who she is. So she's been a total angel for me. I've always said to her that I want to get in a room with her and have half a bottle of wine and get her to improvise, because she's always told me she can't improvise. And I always say to her, Marta, you're such a natural animal, in music, that I don't believe that. So,
All right, one more. Let's listen to the last one here.
I think this is the most Chopinesque of all of them, in a way. Mm-hmm. The first one and this one as well. But there's always a Latin something in there. It's unavoidable. It's always, I'm really surprised by these.
Chopin Institute needs to reissue this. I mean, this is hot. These tracks need to be out there. Come on, right? I mean, the moment people hear this in the episode, they're going to want to be demanding that. I swear, people are already buying the CDs of some of the artists I've promoted. this is rare. This is not, we had to, dig to find it.
Yeah, and it's amazing that they included it in the official box of the competition, as part of my repertoire that I played. But also because it was almost 30 years ago, and I didn't really start improvising in public for real, let's say, give a space to that until I was 31 because of Martha. After I did the competition, I stopped playing. So much has evolved and happened in the last 30 years. And of course, now people know that this is something that is part of who I am. But at the time, it wasn't. So that's why I think what makes it so special, aside from the musical side, but the timeline, Even when I studied it, I was studying at the Royal Academy, people didn't know that I improvised. I was there for 5 years.
So who did you improvise for? Yourself?
I didn't really, no. I mean, usually when I sit down at a piano to meet the piano and to hear its, to whisper its secrets, I will do a little improvisation, but that's just for color, I don't know, it's like a little hello, but I wasn't paying attention to it at all. So this was really like wow, I don't know. I'm really surprised.
Do you recognize yourself in the music though? I mean, can you tell that it's you, it's your fingerprints?
Totally. And I can also tell how I've evolved my playing in all these years. For example, the left hand, I have a very, very powerful left hand, and I've learned to taper the fortissimos and how, and give a multidimensional soundscape, let's say, to the performing colors. And I can hear this kind of abandon of just throwing everything at the piano and just, it's just all temperament. And with time, and that's one of the things I teach my students, it's about taking a step back, being in there, but at the same time, kind of like a sound engineer would assess, a little bit more of this, a little bit less of that, but always being emotionally very, very connected and present. But that was just all emotion. I can see that. I can hear that.
For me, what characterizes these is just the remarkable fluidity. There's not a moment where I can hear you thinking.
No,
it just sounds like it's pouring out of you, but in the most finished way. And that's something that you've always had, clearly. I mean, this was before you were known for this, but in the last 20 or so years, or a little more than that, this is what happens on stage.
The first theme out of the line, the number 1 from Chopin. You know what I mean?
You mean and you, what did you want? Look at that, completely different. So he's asking for a popular Latin American piece.
Dios no niño.
Dios no niño, maybe. Okay, I'll try and do a little bit of both, okay?
And maybe you can talk about the last couple decades, both in terms of how, this kind of improvised, impromptu displays have started happening more and more on stage, and also how you've become a mentor yourself and you've started teaching more and sharing your experiences with young and up and coming pianists. So could you maybe just talk about the sort of recent part of your career, both in terms of improvisation and teaching?
It's all kind of gone hand in hand. I think my questioning of who I am and this whole idea of natural talent and what it really leads to without the work. I would never have thought at 25 that I would be talking about how much you have to work to really craft your talent. Just talent is not enough. It's what you do with talent that's interesting and that's significant. And one of the things I try and help my students with, since I have all of this experience in this kind of very unusual path, is for them to actually discover ways in which they can, of course, hone their skills, but also find a way for them to really be themselves and find their voice, not only at the piano, but also who are they on stage, And of course, Marta, I have to say, was my mentor in many, many ways. Just by playing with her, I learned so much, even though she was never my teacher, but just you learn so much by osmosis next to somebody so great. And now that I've begun teaching at CIM and I have my piano lab as well, I have a cohort of young talents that I really hope I can help to answer some of their questions in the way that I have been looking for answers myself. The goal is to always become the most honest and direct communicator that you can be. And that requires technique, which should be at the service of that message. And it also requires asking a lot of very profound questions about yourself. I think who you are on stage ultimately reveals who you are as a human being in many ways. You can sense what questions an artist has asked themselves by hearing their playing and hearing the depths of their findings. It's a beautiful process. I love mentoring. I love teaching. And at this stage of my life, I keep asking myself questions. And it's interesting because with my work with my students, that's kind of actually made me ask myself even more questions. So it's a never-ending process of curiosity,
Do you feel like your own playing has grown and matured and developed since you've started teaching more?
Absolutely, because it's really directed my focus at this idea of giving when I'm playing. I've come further and further away from the idea of performing. And it's more about, putting myself in a point of discovery, but also giving and sharing what I am discovering in that moment as I play, even when I'm playing in a concert. I feel I've become more of an investigator since I began teaching. And it's really opened up all kinds of, like I said, questions and treasures. And I love that.
There's basically two types of teaching. There's imparting information. There's giving facts and sharing technical know-how. And then there's demonstrating.
Right.
And some teachers are more on one side, some are on the other. Everyone has to do a little bit of both. Where do you fall on this sort of like, okay, sometimes they just need to know these facts. And then how much are you just showing? Just like, I'm not going to say it. I just want you to watch me.
It's a bit of both. It's a combination. I think I have a very experienced or keen eye into understanding what the student needs on a technical level, but also on a musical level. And I find also with the girls, especially, they need an additional kind of validation and an additional acknowledgement that they can be themselves on stage. There's a certain shyness. There's a certain, reticence to just show yourself. So I try and give that to them. And as far as demonstrating, it's amazing how much you learn by watching someone who's more experienced, and well, in my case, I've done this all my life. It's my language. It's amazing how just by that experience, you can learn to connect so many dots that you might not have even known that were there or that you were not connecting with. And that goes for me too. When I hear a great artist that I love, I feel as though I'm a student and I'm learning all the time. And that's my approach to teaching, and also to just being on this planet, is that you can learn something from everybody. So the demonstration is a beautiful way of physically and orally demonstrating the connected dots. And sometimes I find something in the score when I'm teaching them, and they see how I then connect the dots in that moment. So it's a thinking process, but it's also very much something that happens live, and it's a beautiful cohesion of thought and demonstration.
So you said you're really getting these young musicians to, in a way, be themselves, be more of who they already are. What you're suggesting is that there's maybe more barriers to young women finding confidence to share who they really are on stage. Are you comfortable elaborating a bit on that and why it is? Because I think it could really help for people to hear and understand this perspective.
I mean, when I say be who you are should never overtake, of course, the mission of revealing the composer's message. It's not about you showing yourself. It's about being so in tune with your own, let's say, your own humanity, your own suffering, your own joy, your own humor, that you're able to then bring to life the score of somebody else. So it shouldn't really be about you, but you can't access all of that unless you are very much connected to your own world, your inner world. And with girls, I find, for example, let's say when I'm teaching Prokofiev, I notice that there's this kind of shyness and unwillingness to be brutal, which you have to be. You have to be sardonic. You have to be evil. You have to be brutal. You have to be humorous in a very kind of spiky way. And I show them. They look a bit scared sometimes when I play Prokofiev, but I show them and I tell them, dare to be what you're not, at least when you're playing this music. And just to for them to see another woman doing it, but at the same time, as an actor you have to delve into those worlds, and you have to be able to become that animal. And I feel like girls need that extra push of someone saying to them, just go for it, take that risk. And that's something that I discuss and I work with them. And it's amazing because it's incredibly liberating.
It's about acting, because you yourself, I know you're such a gentle, warm person. You're not a belligerent, sharp-edged, fighter. No. But when you play Prokofiev, you have to embody that. And this is what actors do. And so I think that's really revealing. And I don't know, do you think these are parts of our nature that, even if in everyday life you're a warm, compassionate person, do you think we all have these sides of our humanity that we should tap into as musicians? I mean, is there some repertoire some people shouldn't play because maybe it taps into a dark side that is too uncomfortable for them? Or I don't know, have you ever what do you think of that kind of idea?
Every great psychoanalyst would tell you, or Jung, Freud would have said, that of course we all have shadows, and this is part of this kind of contradiction of the human being. I mean, I choose to not be my shadow in my life. I mean, I'm not that person. I choose to do good and to be generous and everything that I try to be. But it's about kind of allowing these shadows that might not really live in your daily life to take form and to become a character, and to embody that, performing the music that requires these characters to come to life. So it's more than acting. It's really accessing, certain characteristics that don't come naturally. But that's what's interesting, because it also shapes your performance. It becomes so much richer if you're able to have a universe and a palette of extremes and subtleties at the same time.
We have aggressive instincts, but it's important that we've sublimated those and that they come out in forms like art that aren't actually physically threatening. If only we could live in a world where all of our aggressive instincts were not eliminated, but transformed into beautiful representations, right?
Absolutely. And it's interesting because, when I listen to my improvisations from when I was 25, I hear something rumbling, something desperate. And it's interesting because soon after that, I stopped playing. So, and I can sense that in myself, and so I think I've learned to channel that in a different way through my music. But obviously with the improvisation, this it was like opening a water dam in that moment. So it's really beautiful for me to hear that after so long, and with hindsight of what's happened in the last 30 years,
This episode has been brought to you by the Chopin Foundation of the United States. Established by Lady Blanka Rosenstiel in 1977, the Chopin Foundation has championed the music of Chopin and helped launch the careers of countless young American pianists for nearly a half-century. To support the Chopin Foundation, visit chopin.org/donate.